All right, let's talk about a story that seriously has everything. We're talking high-speed go-kart racing, a birthday party that goes completely off the rails, and a huge legal fight that all comes down to one very, very sloppy signature. Welcome to this explainer on The King, the Crown, and the Contract. You know this whole incredible, tangled story? It all revolves around one thing, one machine, a single go-kart, and the young man behind the wheel, whose future looked like it was paved with gold.
But that future, that golden path, it came to a sudden, brutal stop. All it took was one crash, one single catastrophic moment that didn't just break a go-kart, it completely shattered a promising career.
So, that's the big question, right? Who is at fault here? Was it just a racing incident? Was there something wrong with the track? Or was it something else entirely? Well, as you're about to see, the answer is way more complicated than you'd ever guess.
Because you see, when the dust settled and the lawyers got involved, the race organizers thought they had an ace up their sleeve. They pulled out a signed contract, a liability waiver, that they believed made them totally untouchable. Case closed, right? Well, not so fast.
So let's start at the beginning. Let's talk about our main character in all this, Ronald King, a talented young racer who was absolutely on the fast track to success.
Ronald wasn't some rookie, you know? He'd been racing competitively since he was 15. He knew the risks, and he and his parents had signed plenty of these liability waivers before. So in 2018, at 17, he's ready for the big time, the Elkhart King of the Caribbean Grand Prix. And, kind of ironically, the whole thing was sponsored by Admiral Nelson's spiced rum.
And this is where the trouble really starts. During the very first race of the series, Ronald gets into a nasty crash. He messes up his shoulder, but what nobody realizes is that he also gets a tiny hairline fracture in his arm. It goes completely undetected, so his doctor prescribes him some pretty strong pain medication. And that little detail is about to become a very, very big deal.
Okay, so now we get to the timeline. We're talking about the handful of days leading up to that second fateful race. A period where everything that could go wrong did go wrong.
I mean, just look at this. It's a perfect storm of bad luck. In between the two races, Ronald has his 18th birthday. Boom, he's a legal adult. The night before race number 2, he's at a mandatory pre-race meeting, and he's still taking those powerful painkillers. Then, the morning of, he signs this all-clear checklist before getting in the cart. Each one of these steps is just another link in this chain of disaster. Let's really zoom in on that night before the race, because this is where a birthday celebration, a really, really bad practical joke, and a supposedly legally binding document all collide.
So, here's how this whole thing goes down. Ronald's at the sponsor's little party tent, the Caribbean Cabana. He's on his meds, his throat's dry, so he just orders a regular Coke. But one of his friends thinks it'll be hilarious to swap it for something called a Davy Jones Locker. It's a drink designed to taste just like Coke, but it's pretty much all alcohol. Ronald has no idea. He chugs the whole thing in like 30 seconds. And that potent cocktail mixed with his medication, it was an instant recipe for disaster.
What happens next is just pure chaos. And it goes viral, of course. He starts stumbling around, he grabs a prop crown off a statue of Admiral Nelson, puts it on his own head, and just starts shouting that he's the real king of the Caribbean. And yep, you guessed it, his friends caught the whole ridiculous scene on video.
Now, here's the crucial misunderstanding. While all this is going on, the race organizer shows up with a liability contract. He sees Ronald acting bizarrely, and he asks the bartender what's up. But the bartender didn't see the prank, so he just says the only thing Ronald had to drink was a Coke. So to the organizer, it just looks like he's being a goofy teenager. He hands him the contract.
So Ronald takes the contract and he signs it. But just look at this comparison. On the left, you've got his normal clear signature. And on the right, that's what he actually wrote on the contract. It's not even his name. It's this sloppy scrawl that literally says, "The Real King." This piece of paper is about to become the most important document in the entire case.
And just in case there was any doubt about how impaired he was, literally moments after signing that thing, Ronald threw up all over the table and passed out cold. His friends had to physically drag him home. There was absolutely no question. He was completely incapacitated.
Okay, so that's the wild story of what happened. Now let's switch gears and step into the courtroom, because this is where a crazy go-kart story turns into a really fascinating legal battle.
The organizer's entire defense hinged on something in the contract called an exculpatory clause. It sounds complicated, but it's basically a legal get-out-of-jail-free card. It's a part of the contract where you agree ahead of time not to sue the other person if something goes wrong. Which brings us right to the heart of the matter. Can a contract, any contract, that was signed by someone in that condition under those completely bizarre circumstances actually be considered legally valid? Is it enforceable?
Ronald's lawyers fought back with two major arguments. First was capacity to contract. Basically, the law says you have to be in your right mind to agree to a contract. Was Ronald, in his real king persona, capable of understanding what he was signing? Probably not. The second argument was about ratification. The organizers claimed that by signing that all-clear checklist the next morning, he had legally approved or ratified the contract he'd signed while he was intoxicated.
This chart really lays it all out. For a contract to be valid, you need these 4 things. You've got an offer and acceptance? Check. Consideration, where both sides get something? Check. A legal purpose? Check. But then you hit capacity. And that, well, that's where the whole thing falls apart. It is highly questionable. Could someone who was so intoxicated he passed out really have the mental capacity to sign away his legal rights? That's the weak point in the organizers' whole case.
But there's one more piece to this puzzle. And frankly, it's the part that really shows what the organizers were trying to pull off. Let's look at what I'm calling the ultimate escape clause. This wasn't just your standard, hey, racing is dangerous waiver. No. When you actually read the fine print, this contract was a legal fortress. It was designed to protect the organizers from pretty much anything you can imagine.
And here it is, the most unbelievable part of this entire story. The contract specifically said that it released them from liability even if the injuries were caused by, get this, the negligence of the event sponsors and/or race organizers. Let that sink in. They were basically saying, even if we mess up and it's our fault you get hurt, you still can't sue us.
And that just leaves us with this one giant, lingering question. If a contract is written so broadly that it allows you to sign away your fundamental right to be safe from someone else's carelessness, is that even fair? Is it truly a contract in the spirit of the law, or is it just a piece of paper designed to let people avoid taking responsibility? That's a huge question, and one worth thinking about.